My name is Margaret Ellis, and I am 81 years old. People say that when you grow old, the past becomes a softer place. They say memories turn gentle, that the hurts shrink and forgiveness comes easy. They're wrong. Some memories don't fade. Some secrets don't die just because the body grows weak. And there are nights when the past sits beside me like a living thing, breathing in the dark, refusing to let me sleep. The secret I kept for half a century began on a night just like this, quiet, cold, and still. I was sitting in my old rocking chair by the window when headlights swept across my yard. I rarely get visitors. My husband has been gone 20 years, and most of my family only remembers me when the holidays draw close. But that night, a woman stepped out of a car and walked toward my porch. A young woman. Tall, with the same brown eyes I once had in my youth. She looked nervous, clutching something in her hand. I opened the door before she could knock. "Are you Margaret?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Yes. She took a deep breath, as if what she was about to say weighed more than her voice could carry. "I think I'm the granddaughter you never met." The world tilted. My hand tightened on the doorframe so I wouldn't fall. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. Because there was only one person who could have given me a granddaughter. The child I lost. The child I spent 50 years trying to forget. The woman held out a faded photograph. I didn't have to look closely to know who it was. My daughter. And just like that, the past returned, not as a memory, but as a demand. "Please," she whispered, "I need you to tell me what happened." Nobody ever talks about her. I swallowed. My voice trembled like the first crack in ice. "You want the truth?" She nodded. So I opened the door wider. And I began. I was 18 the year everything changed. I offered her a seat at my kitchen table. It was an old wooden thing, scratched, worn, and scarred from decades of spilled coffee and slammed emotions. She looked around the room with a kind of fragile curiosity, like someone walking into a museum of a life they never got to witness. There was something too familiar about her, the shape of her jaw, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. I saw echoes of a young woman I once was. A version of myself before life hardened me. She placed the photograph on the table. "I know this is my mother," she said softly. "But nobody tells me what happened to her. It's like the whole family erased her." I didn't speak. I just stared at that photograph. My daughter looked back at me from a moment frozen in time, bright smile, raincoat, holding a red umbrella. I had forgotten how fearless she used to look. Grandparents aren't supposed to fear their grandchildren. But my heart was pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. "What's your name?" I finally asked. "Sophia." I nodded. "A beautiful name." She swallowed. "I didn't come for kindness. I came for the truth." That jolted something in me. The way she said it, like she already sensed there was darkness buried in this house. I poured her a cup of tea. The old kettle squeaked. The steam curled up between us like a ghost. "You're not the first person to ask," I said quietly. "Just the first brave enough to stay." Sophia leaned closer. "What are they hiding?" I closed my eyes. And the years fell away. I was 18 the first time I learned how dangerous love could be. Back then, the world was smaller and life was simple on the surface: church on Sundays, school in the town hall, neighbors who knew every detail about everyone else. People didn't have secrets. At least, that's what they believed. I was the only daughter in a house full of brothers. My father was a stern man, hard hands, harder words. The kind of man who believed women should stay quiet and out of the way. My mother was gentle, but fear had taken the fire from her eyes long before I was old enough to understand why. And then there was him. His name was Daniel Hayes. He lived on the other side of the river in a small brick house hidden behind willow trees. Daniel was everything I wasn't allowed to want: handsome, reckless, untamed. He wasn't like the boys in town who bowed their heads and did what they were told. Daniel laughed too loudly, questioned too boldly, and looked at the world like it belonged to him. I should have walked away the first time he asked to meet me by the river. But I didn't. I went. And that one choice changed the shape of my entire life. Sophia interrupted, eyes wide. You loved him? I laughed weakly. Not a happy laugh, more like a cracked one. Oh, child. Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's a fire that burns down every safe thing you've ever known. Sophia's voice lowered. So what happened to him? I didn't answer yet. Instead, I stared at the photograph again. Because the truth is much more complicated than a romantic tragedy. It's a story of mistakes and consequences that echoed through generations. Sophia pushed forward, desperate. My mother never talked about her father. Not once. I looked her straight in the eyes. That's because the man who loved me wasn't the man who raised your mother. Her breath caught. What do you mean? And that was the moment I knew she felt it, the shadow in the story. The thing that wasn't safe. The thing her family buried. I reached for the photograph and held it gently, like touching a wound. I'm going to tell you everything, I whispered. Because the truth didn't disappear. It was just waiting. I paused, gathering the courage I never found in my youth. Then I lowered my voice to a near whisper. But before I take you into the past, you need to understand one thing. Her eyes locked on mine. When a woman hides a secret for 50 years, it's never because she wants to. It's because she had no choice. Sophia sat back, stunned. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm saying the night your mother was born, I wasn't the only one who lost something. The wind howled against the old house. The lights flickered slightly, as if the past was already clawing its way out. I'm saying someone else paid a price, and they never forgave me. Sophia's voice cracked. Who? I whispered the word that changed both our lives. Your grandfather. Her eyes widened. He wasn't who you think. Outside, the night pressed against the windows. The world held its breath. And I began again, this time not as a grandmother, but as the young girl who made one mistake that shaped her entire destiny. The man I loved didn't just break my heart. He destroyed everything I thought my life would be. The memory of that summer returns to me the same way a nightmare does, slow at first, like distant thunder, and then suddenly so real you can taste the fear in your mouth. I still remember the first evening Daniel came looking for me. The sun was sinking behind the hills, turning the river into a line of gold. I was walking home from the market with a basket of fresh bread, and there he was, leaning against an oak tree, arms crossed, like he had been waiting for me his whole life. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "And yet," he smiled, "I am." That's the thing about youth, we think warnings are invitations. We think the danger is a story that happens to someone else. We walked by the river until the sky turned purple. He told me about his dreams of leaving town, traveling, becoming someone bigger than this tiny place would ever allow. "No one here believes in anything," he said. "Not even themselves." I wanted to argue, but he was right. That was the first time he held my hand. The first time I believed I could be someone more than a farmer's daughter. And the first time I ignored the voice inside that whispered, "Careful. He doesn't belong to your world." Weeks passed, then months. We became inseparable, secret meetings, stolen hours, whispered promises under the willow trees. My family didn't know. The town didn't know. But someone noticed. Someone always does. It was a woman named Helen Carter, the town's most dangerous gossip. She saw us together one evening and later cornered me outside the bakery. "You're playing with fire, Margaret," she said. "Girls like you end up ruined." I walked away, but her words clung to me like smoke. Even then, some part of me sensed she wasn't entirely wrong. Sophia watched me carefully, absorbing every detail like someone trying to piece together a puzzle no one else cared enough to solve. "Why didn't you marry him?" she finally asked. I took a shaky breath. "I almost did. The truth is, I thought we would run away together. We talked about it constantly, putting miles between us and this small, judgmental town. I imagined a life where my family's expectations couldn't reach me. We even packed our bags one night. Daniel was supposed to pick me up, take me across the river, and never look back. But he never came. I waited on that dirt road for hours. The moon climbed high into the sky, then melted into dawn. I finally walked home barefoot, humiliated, hopeful, terrified. For days, he didn't appear. When he finally found me again, he looked different, exhausted, desperate, broken. His hands shook when he spoke. "My father found out," he whispered. "He locked me in the shed. Took my money. Threatened to kill me if I left." Even now, I remember the way his voice cracked. It was not the voice of the fearless boy I fell in love with. It was the voice of a trapped animal. "I'm sorry," he said. "I tried." And instead of running, we did something far more foolish. We tried to stay. That winter brought more than snow. It brought consequences neither of us were prepared for. I started feeling sick in the mornings. My dresses grew tighter. My mother noticed first. Mothers always do. One night, I woke up to her sitting at the edge of my bed, face pale with dread. "How long have you known?" I couldn't speak. I just cried. She held me like she wanted to protect me, but her voice trembled. "Your father can never know." I knew what she meant. Girls didn't get second chances. Not in our town. Not in our time. I thought Daniel and I would face it together. But I was wrong again. When I told him, he turned quiet. Not angry, not shocked, just quiet in a way that felt like the end of something. "We'll figure it out," he said. but his eyes were full of fear. Sophia swallowed hard. You were pregnant. I nodded. And that child was my mother? I wish the story was that simple. Her face tightened. What happened? I reached into a drawer and pulled out something I hadn't touched in years, a small music box. It was tarnished and dented, but when I opened it, the soft tune still played. Daniel had given it to me the day he proposed running away again. Next week, he said. I swear it this time. I believed him. But fate doesn't care what we plan. 2 days later, his family disappeared. Their house was empty. The windows boarded up. No goodbye. No explanation. Daniel Hayes vanished from my life like smoke, like he never existed at all. And I was a pregnant 18-year-old girl left behind to face a world that didn't forgive mistakes. Sophia's voice barely rose above a whisper. Did you ever see him again? I stared into her eyes. Yes. Her breath hitched. But not the way I expected. The room fell silent. The wind groaned through the old window frames like the house itself remembered. Because I wasn't abandoned. Not entirely. Life had a far crueler ending in store for us both. Daniel didn't leave by choice. And I didn't discover the truth until it was already too late. Rumors spread faster than truth in a small town. When Daniel disappeared, people didn't say he moved away. They didn't say his family relocated for work. They said he ran. Abandoned his life. Abandoned me. Abandoned the child growing inside me. No one knew the truth, that someone forced him to leave. Or silenced him. Or scared him so deeply that he never had the chance to say goodbye. But the world chose the cruel story. They always do. I remember the first time I felt the shift. It was in the bakery again. The same gossiping woman, Helen Carter, narrowed her eyes as I walked in. Poor Margaret, she said loudly, boys don't stay around when trouble shows. Laughter followed. I kept my chin lifted, but my heart felt like it might break apart right there between the bread aisle and the counter of pastries. For the first time in my life, I realized love doesn't protect you. It exposes you. Back home, the atmosphere changed too. My mother stopped singing while she washed dishes. She moved quietly, with a heaviness in her bones, as if she was already bracing for the storm she knew was coming. My father, though, he sensed something. He always did. It was like he could smell shame in the air. One evening, I came home late and found him waiting on the porch. Arms folded. Jaw clenched. Pipe still smoking in his hand. Where were you? He demanded. With friends, I lied. His eyes scanned me, too deeply, too knowingly. My father never believed in soft words or gentle warnings. He believed in discipline. Punishment. Control. Girls who lie, he said, always bring disgrace. I remember thinking, if he knew, if he ever found out, the consequences wouldn't just fall on me, but on the innocent child inside me. Sophia interrupted again, her brow furrowed. You were afraid of your father? I looked at her and didn't hesitate. I was terrified. My father was a man of reputation. Proud. Respected. The kind of man who would rather bury the truth than ever admit imperfections under his roof. If I told him I was carrying a child, I don't know if I would have survived it. And so the secret stayed between my mother and me. But secrets don't stay secrets for long. My stomach began to show. The townspeople whispered more. No matter how loose my dresses were, the truth pushed through the fabric along with my growing fear. My mother pleaded with me every night. You must forget him. Move on. Think of the child. But I couldn't forget Daniel. Even when others turned him into a villain, I remembered the boy by the river who held my hand like I was the only thing in the world worth fighting for. And the music box he gave me became my only comfort. I played it every night and imagined his voice. I'll find you. I'll come back. But he never did. Winter turned to spring. My belly grew heavy. My mother worked in secret, mending baby blankets, sewing tiny pajamas, hiding everything from my father. We lived in fear of the moment he'd find out. And that moment came in the cruelest way. One morning, I woke to shouting outside. My father's voice roaring like thunder. I rushed to the window and saw Sheriff Walker walking up our path, holding something in his hands. A letter. My heart dropped. My father snatched it from the sheriff, opened it, read it, and his face turned a shade I had never seen. Not anger. Something darker. He marched into the house and slammed the door so hard the walls rattled. Who is the father? He demanded. My voice trembled. I can't tell you. You shame this family, he growled. You will fix it. Fix what? I cried. The child is innocent. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me so hard my head snapped back. No daughter of mine will give birth without being a wife. Then he dragged a suitcase from the closet and tossed it at my feet. You marry someone respectable, he said, or you are no longer welcome in this house. And with those words, he didn't just break my heart. He exiled me. Sophia's voice cracked. He made you leave? Yes. But you were just a girl. She didn't understand it yet, not fully. Not the way older generations were built. Shame was a weapon. Reputation was a battlefield. My mother tried to defend me, but my father struck the table with his fist so hard it split the wood. Choose, he said. Husband or the streets. Those were his only choices. Not safety. Not support. Not forgiveness. Just marriage or abandonment. So I made a choice. Not because I wanted to. Because I wasn't given another option. Sophia whispered, Who did you marry? I let out a slow breath. A man I didn't love. Her eyes widened. But then, what happened to Daniel? I looked away. That's what I spent years trying to learn. Because Daniel didn't leave forever. And when he returned, it was already too late. But that part of the story doesn't come now. There is still one more truth that must be told first. I didn't lose the man I loved. I was forced into a life I never chose. The man my father chose for me was named Thomas Reed. Thomas was everything Daniel was not: steady, polite, predictable, and emotionless. He had worked at my father's sawmill since he was young. He rarely smiled. He spoke even less. He walked through life like he was following lines someone else had drawn for him. I barely knew him, but my father believed one thing. A man like Thomas will keep you in line. That was all that mattered. To men like my father, marriage was a tool. Not a promise. Not a partnership. Just a solution. I remember my wedding day with a strange, detached clarity. The church was small. The bells were silent. There were no flowers. No music. Not even a smile from my mother. My father walked me down the aisle like he was escorting livestock. Thomas stood at the altar, stiff and uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. He didn't look at me. He didn't touch me. He simply waited for the moment to come and go. And it did. I said my vows with a numbness that felt like sinking into cold water. When the ring slid onto my finger, I felt the weight of the world settle onto my shoulders. Not one person in that church asked what I wanted. Not one person saw that I was breaking. Sophia listened in silence. Her eyes glistened as she imagined that scene. "You didn't love him," she said softly. "No," I answered. "But I didn't hate him either. Sometimes life isn't about good or evil. Sometimes it's just survival. Because love didn't protect me. Marriage was supposed to." Thomas brought me to his family's small farmhouse across town. His mother, an old widow, welcomed me with a polite nod. But there was no warmth in the house. No laughter. No sense of home. Thomas treated me like a guest. Not cruelly. Just distantly. He didn't ask about the baby. Never touched my hand. Never questioned the truth. Maybe he knew. Maybe he didn't want to know. For months, we lived like two ghosts passing through the same space. I cooked, cleaned, and tried to build something that resembled a life. But every night, when Thomas fell asleep in the other room, I sat by the window with my music box and wondered where Daniel had gone. I prayed for a letter. A sign. Anything. But silence answered every prayer. Time moved forward, even when I couldn't. My belly grew heavy and low. The winter storms returned. The river froze into a sheet of glass. The whole world felt like it was holding its breath. Then the day came. The day I became a mother. It was a cold January morning. Snow covered the fields outside the window. I remember gripping the sheets and crying out as the midwife coached me through the pain. Thomas waited outside the door. He never once came in. Hours passed before I heard the baby cry. A sharp, beautiful sound. My heart leaped, and the midwife placed her in my arms. A daughter. Her skin was soft as rose petals. Her eyes were blue like the river in spring. She was perfect. For one moment, the world was gentle again. I named her Elena. Not after anyone in the family. After the name Daniel once whispered to me under the willow trees. If we ever have a daughter, I want to call her Elena. I kept that promise, even without him. Sophia covered her mouth. That was my mother. I nodded. And I loved her from the moment she took her first breath. But love doesn't erase danger. Because the moment she was born, the town began to talk again. Not about Daniel anymore, but about the child. Whispers followed me everywhere. That baby doesn't look like Thomas. She deserves better. She should never have been allowed to stay here. Every word was a dagger. And Thomas? He said nothing. Not once did he hold her. Not once did he speak to her. He treated her like I did, like she belonged to someone else. And she did. But I still believed Daniel would find us. I still believed one day he would walk through that door and say, "I didn't forget." Sophia leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "So when did he return?" I folded my hands, suddenly aware of how old they looked, thin, spotted, trembling from memories that never fully healed. "He came back when Elena was 5. Sophia's eyes widened. "But you said you married another man." "Yes," I said. "Because Daniel was already gone by the time he returned." "What do you mean?" I stared at the old music box on the table. Its tune was still echoing faintly. "When he came back," I said slowly, "Daniel wasn't the same man I fell in love with." What I didn't say, what I couldn't say yet, was the truth. He didn't come back for me. He came back to destroy everything. Some people return not to stay, but to take away the one thing you love most. 5 years passed before I saw Daniel Hayes again. 5 years of pretending the world was normal. 5 years of raising my daughter in a house that wasn't mine. 5 years of teaching myself not to hope. Elena was beautiful, curly brown hair, bright eyes, laughed like spring rain. She was the only warm light in that cold farmhouse. She ran in the fields, played with stray dogs, collected wildflowers, and asked questions about everything. And every time she smiled, I thought of the boy by the river. Of what could have been. But life has a cruel habit of returning at the most fragile moment. It happened on a summer afternoon. I was washing clothes outside when I heard footsteps on the gravel path. At first, I didn't look up. I thought it was Thomas returning early from the sawmill. Then I heard the voice. "Margaret?" My hands froze in the soapy water. I turned slowly. And there he was. Daniel. Older. Thinner. Beard darker. Eyes tired. But it was him. For a moment, the world spun and steadied around him. My legs almost gave out. I whispered his name like a prayer I no longer believed in. Daniel. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for me. He just stood there, holding a folded letter in his hand. I didn't know whether to run into his arms or run away. He was the first to speak. "I came back," he said. I don't know what answer I expected, but it wasn't the truth that spilled from him next. "My father took me out of town the night before we were supposed to leave. He didn't move us away. He sent me to a..." He stopped himself. "A place," he finished quietly. "A place that changed me." His voice broke, not from sadness. From shame. It didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was this. "You left," I whispered. "I never wanted to," he said. "But I didn't have a choice." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. Then his eyes drifted to the house, to the window, to the little girl sitting inside, drawing with crayons. Elena. He saw her and froze. Is that? Yes. He took a step toward the door, instinctive, desperate. I blocked his way. No. Margaret, is she mine? My heart threatened to split open. Because in that moment, every lie I'd ever lived came crashing down around me. Yes, I said. She's your daughter. The ground shifted beneath his feet. His hands trembled. I came back for you, he whispered. For her. But fate wasn't done punishing us yet. Because just then, the farmhouse door creaked open, and Thomas stepped onto the porch. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He simply looked at Daniel, then at me, then at the child who wasn't his. In his eyes, I saw everything. Humiliation, betrayal, anger, and a pain he never knew how to speak. Thomas walked back inside without a word. And that silence was more terrifying than violence. I turned to Daniel, panicked. You have to leave. His jaw tightened. No. Not this time. You don't understand, I whispered. If Thomas says something, if the town finds out. Daniel stepped closer. I lost you once because I didn't fight hard enough. I won't lose you again. For a moment, I let myself believe him. But I was no longer the girl by the river. I had a child. A fragile life depending on me. And Daniel didn't know how cruel the world could be, not yet. Just then, the window opened. Elena leaned out and waved. Mama! Who's that? I felt Daniel's heart break without him speaking. Your father, I mouthed. He swallowed hard. His eyes filled with something I wasn't sure he could survive. Does Thomas love her? He asked. I didn't lie. No. That was when Daniel made the first mistake. He tried to step toward Elena. Daniel, wait. He didn't listen. He walked toward her like a man who had already decided fate could be rewritten. But it couldn't. Because as soon as he touched the porch step, Thomas reappeared, holding a shotgun. Sophia gasped aloud, covering her mouth. You're lying, she whispered. I shook my head. I wish I were. Thomas pointed the gun at Daniel, voice trembling with fury. You don't belong here. She's my wife. That's my house. That's my family. Daniel didn't move. She's my daughter. The world held its breath. If I hadn't stepped between them, someone would have died that day. I stood between the two men, voice shaking. Stop. Please. Thomas lowered the gun slightly, but not enough. He stared at Daniel, hatred choking him. You should have stayed gone. Then he spoke words I will never forget. If you come back, I will kill you. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just looked at Elena one last time. And in that second, I saw everything I ever needed to know. He loved her. Maybe he always would. Then he turned around and walked away. I didn't know then that it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I should have followed him. Instead, I made the decision that changed everything. Daniel didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. The town didn't know he had returned, but Thomas did. And Thomas was a man who felt betrayal like a wound. He didn't shout at me. He didn't strike me. He didn't even look at me. He just changed. His silence became a cage. At meals, he stared straight ahead. When I spoke, he didn't respond. When I stood beside him, he moved away. He no longer lived with me, he lived beside me, like I owed him something I would never be able to repay. I tried to apologize. I tried to explain. But every word I said was a hammer hitting stone. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the real trouble began. Sheriff Walker came to the house on a cloudy afternoon. He stood on the porch like he had already judged every decision I'd ever made. "Margaret, I need to speak with you." Thomas stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes daring me to lie. "What is it?" I asked, heart pounding. The sheriff lowered his voice. "You're being warned. That Hayes boy isn't welcome back in this town." "Why? What happened to him?" He hesitated. That was my first sign something darker was hidden beneath the surface. "He was sent away," Walker finally said. "For his own good." "For his own good?" I repeated. "Or yours?" The sheriff stepped closer. "Men like him stir trouble. You have a family now. Protect it." That was the moment I realized Daniel wasn't just gone. He had been erased. Someone wanted his memory buried so deep that no one would even ask a question. But something in me refused to forget him. Days turned into weeks. The silence weighed on me like winter frost. I replayed every moment by the river. Every promise. Every "I'll come back for you." And then one night, I did something reckless. I went to find him. I didn't tell Thomas. I didn't tell anyone. I wrapped a shawl over my shoulders and slipped into the woods, following the road toward the river, the place where everything had once begun. The trees whispered overhead. The moonlight flickered against the water. The willow branches swayed in a rhythm that felt like memory itself. For a second, I almost expected to see him standing there, waiting. But the riverbank was empty. Except for a single object lying in the dirt. A small silver locket. I picked it up and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a faded photo of me. And on the other side? A tiny drawing of a little girl holding a flower. Elena. My heart cracked open. He had been there. He never stopped thinking of us. He still belonged to this place, even if the world had pushed him out. I pressed the locket to my chest. "I'll find you," I whispered into the night. But I didn't hear the footsteps behind me. Someone else had followed. "Looking for him?" The voice made my blood run cold. I turned and saw Sheriff Walker standing at the edge of the clearing. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I'm on public land." He stepped closer. Not when you're digging up old ghosts. I'm just looking for answers. He stared at me for a long moment. You're a mother now. Think of your daughter. Some men don't come back the same. There was something in his tone, thick with implication, heavy with warning. What happened to him? I asked again. He didn't answer. He just tipped his hat and walked away. And I knew then that Daniel's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was planned. When I returned home, Elena was asleep in her small bed, her tiny hand clutching the music box. I sat beside her and stroked her hair. I'll protect you, I whispered. Even from the people who want to pretend we never existed. But mothers don't get to choose the danger. Sometimes danger comes looking for you. The next morning, I found a note pinned to the front door. Written in familiar handwriting. I need to see her. One last time. I'll wait by the willow at sunset. D. I stared at the words until the paper blurred. One last time? Those 3 words terrified me. Not because he wanted to see us, but because I knew what last meant in this town. It meant someone had forced his hand. Someone was closing in. I went to the river that evening. I didn't take Elena. I didn't tell Thomas. The air smelled like rain. The water shimmered like silver. And I waited. Minutes passed. Then, finally, I heard footsteps. He stepped out of the trees as if he had been cut from the night itself. Daniel. But this time, something was different. His eyes were hollow. His hands shook. He looked like a man who had been running for far too long. Without a word, he reached into his coat and pulled out something. A small wooden box. Give this to her, he said. If anything happens to me. What are you talking about? I whispered, fear rising. They won't leave me alone, Margaret. They want to shut me up. Who? He swallowed. You already know. My blood went cold. My father. The sheriff. The town. Together. And before I could speak again, he pulled me into his arms. I never stopped loving you, he said. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me as the man I once knew. Because in the next moment, someone shouted. A gun cocked. And everything changed. I thought I had saved my daughter from danger. I didn't realize the danger was already here. The sound of that gun being cocked froze time. It was the kind of sound that cuts through the soul before the ear. I turned toward the shadow near the trees and saw a figure standing there, half hidden, half revealed by moonlight. The sheriff. Walker's voice thundered across the clearing. Step away from her, Daniel. Daniel didn't move. His hand stayed wrapped around mine. His eyes never left my face. He was terrified, but the terror wasn't for himself. It was for me. For God's sake, I said, put the gun down. Walker's grip tightened. He didn't drop the weapon. His face was stone, carved by a long career of control and judgment. You should have stayed gone, he said to Daniel. What are you afraid of? Daniel asked. The truth? There was something dangerous in Walker's silence. Something that whispered of things buried beneath years of lies. "This isn't your town anymore," the sheriff answered coldly. "It never belonged to you," Daniel shot back. For a heartbeat, I thought the world was about to end. And yet, what terrified me more wasn't the gun. It was Daniel's next words. "I have proof." Walker flinched. That was all I needed to know. Whatever drove Daniel away wasn't fate, it was forced. Walker aimed the gun straight at him. "Hand over the box." Daniel held the small wooden box tighter against his chest and shook his head. "You'll have to kill me first." The sheriff didn't blink. "If you don't give it to me, I just might." My heart hammered in my ribs. "Stop!" I screamed. Maybe it was the sound of my voice. Maybe it was fear. Maybe desperation finally spoke. But Daniel did something I didn't expect. He gave me the box. And in a whisper that felt like a final prayer, he said, "Protect her." I didn't understand. Protect who? Our daughter? Or the truth? Sheriff Walker fired. The blast echoed across the river. A burst of light tore the night in half. I screamed and stumbled back, the box clutched against my chest. But Daniel didn't fall. The shot had gone wide, intentionally or accidentally, I'll never know. But the bullet cracked into a nearby tree instead of him. Daniel didn't waste the moment. He turned and ran. Walker fired again. Missed. Daniel disappeared into the trees like a shadow dissolved by fear. Walker lowered the gun and cursed under his breath. I stared at him in horror. "You could have killed him." Walker turned his rage onto me. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You brought trouble into this town, and now that trouble's back." "This isn't about the town," I shouted. "This is about something you're hiding." He stepped so close I could smell the cigarette smoke on his coat. "You listen to me, Margaret Ellis. If that man shows his face again, I won't miss." I should have collapsed. I should have begged. I should have run home. But mothers don't bend when danger rises. They root themselves into the earth. And I said the only thing I could. "You stay away from my daughter." Walker stared at me, stone-faced and unreadable. "Keep her away from him," he said. "Or she'll suffer the same fate he did." "What fate?" He didn't answer. He just turned and walked away. I didn't go home right away. My whole body trembled as I held that box Daniel had given me. It felt heavier than it should have, like it held the weight of our entire history, our entire mistake. When I reached home, I locked the doors and checked on Elena. She was curled up, fast asleep, clutching her music box against her heart. She didn't know. Not yet. But I did. Something dark was moving in our lives. Something that started long before she was born and wouldn't end with a gunshot. The next morning, the town was buzzing. Gossip spreading like sparks in dry grass. Somebody had heard the gunshots. Somebody saw Daniel at the river. By sunrise, stories filled every porch and kitchen. He's dangerous. He's unstable. He's back for revenge. And then came the worst of it. He wants the child. The lies grew faster than the truth. That's how small towns survive. On fear. On rumor. On history twisted into something that fits someone else's story. I knew then that my daughter wasn't just at risk from Daniel. She was at risk because of him. Not because of who he was, but because of what he knew. For weeks, Daniel didn't return. But he sent one more message. A note slipped under our door. You were right to fight. Don't let them win. I'll be watching. That was the last letter I ever received from him. I didn't know where he went. I didn't know what he was running from. But I knew this. He didn't run away from me. He ran away from them. From the people who wanted him gone. From the truth that lived in that wooden box. Sophia leaned forward, hands shaking. What was inside it? I met her eyes. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Why? Because I knew if I learned the truth, my life would never belong to me again. Sophia didn't understand yet. Not the depth of it. Not the danger. Not the ending. So I took a deep breath and said the words that still haunted me. And then came the night everything changed. Some secrets don't destroy us because they're hidden. They destroy us the moment we uncover them. Life went still for a while after that night. Days passed quietly, almost peacefully. No gunshots. No footsteps in the woods. No shadows outside my window. The town went on pretending nothing had happened. Pretending Daniel Hayes was a ghost that had wandered in and wandered back out. But I knew better. People don't return after 5 years just to disappear again. There was unfinished business buried somewhere beneath this town's polite surface. And everyone was pretending not to see it. Especially Thomas. He never spoke of that night. He never spoke of the gun. He never spoke of Daniel's name again. He just went to work, came home, and sat at the dinner table like a man waiting for a storm he knew was coming but couldn't stop. I thought the silence meant safety. I thought darkness had passed. I was wrong. It happened 2 weeks later. The night was quiet. Thomas was working late. Elena was asleep in her bed. And I sat alone by the kitchen stove, holding the wooden box Daniel had given me. For days, I avoided opening it. I feared what might be inside. A secret is a dangerous thing, and once you learn it, you don't get to unlearn it. But something was pulling me toward it. A voice. A memory. A promise. So that night, I placed the box on the table and unlatched it. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. Inside was nothing like I expected. Not jewelry. Not letters. Not keepsakes. It was a small stack of faded papers. Documents. Names. Dates. Signatures. And one name repeated over and over. Sheriff Walker. And beside it, my father's handwriting. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't understand everything printed on those pages, but I understood enough to know that what Daniel left behind wasn't just proof of injustice. It was proof of corruption. Proof of something hidden in this town for years. Proof of something worth killing over. Before I could read more, I heard it. A scream. High-pitched. Sharp. Terrified. It tore through the night like glass shattering. I dropped the papers and ran. My heart bursting against my ribs. My feet pounding across the floor. It was Elena. I sprinted to her room and threw open the door. She was standing up in her little bed, shaking like a leaf, tears streaming down her face. "Mama! Mama!" I grabbed her in my arms. "What is it? What happened?" She looked toward the window. There was a man outside. My blood froze. The window was slightly open, curtains fluttering in the wind. A footprint in the dirt below. Not Thomas's. Not mine. Someone had been watching. Someone had been close enough to touch her. I rushed to bolt the windows, my hands trembling so badly I could barely turn the lock. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. I'm here." But I didn't believe my own words. Because that scream changed everything. This wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't about my past. It was about protecting my daughter. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the rocking chair beside Elena's bed, holding the music box and watching the window for any sign of movement. Hours passed. The darkness shifted into dawn. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but my mind wouldn't rest. I kept seeing Daniel at the river. I kept hearing Walker's warning. I kept imagining the man at the window, his breath against the glass. And I kept circling back to that box. Those documents. Those signatures. There was more to Daniel's disappearance than heartbreak. He knew something. Something the town wanted buried. Something my father and the sheriff had worked together to hide. I looked at Elena sleeping peacefully and made a silent promise. I will not let them take you too. At sunrise, Thomas came home. When he walked into the kitchen and saw the wooden box sitting open on the table, his face drained of color. He didn't speak at first. Then he reached across the table and slammed it shut. "Where did you get that?" His voice wasn't angry. It was afraid. It was the first time I ever saw fear in Thomas Reed's eyes. I stepped between him and the box, heart pounding. It was Daniel's. Thomas stared at me like I had just set a match to our entire life. "You should have destroyed it." "What's in it?" I demanded. He backed away. "You don't want those answers." "Yes," I said. "I do." But before he could reply, there was a knock at the door. Slow. Heavy. Echoing through the house the same way thunder warns of a storm. Thomas didn't move. Neither did I. Because we both already knew who it was. The sheriff. And he wasn't here for questions. He was here for silence. That was the moment I realized my family wasn't being protected by the town. It was being hunted by it. Thomas and I didn't move. The knock echoed again, steady, patient, confident. I felt Elena stirring in her room. My heartbeat jumped. Thomas whispered, "Don't answer it." But the knock came a third time, harder. Then Walker's voice slid through the wood like a knife. Margaret, we need to talk. There are voices that push you back into your chair. There are voices that make you run. And then there are voices like Walker's. The kind that freeze you in place because you already know the world is about to change. Thomas swallowed hard. He's here for the box. It wasn't a question. I picked up the wooden box and held it tight to my chest. I didn't understand yet, but I felt it. If Walker got it, something terrible would follow. Thomas walked toward the door. He didn't open it fully, just cracked it enough to see the man on the porch. The sheriff stood there like he owned the property. Hat low. Jaw set. Hand resting on his gun. We had an agreement, Walker said. You were supposed to keep her away from him. Thomas didn't invite him in. But Walker stepped inside anyway. He pushed past Thomas and straight into our kitchen, straight toward me. And when he saw the box in my hands, his expression changed. All the polite mask fell away. What did Daniel give you? I didn't answer. He took one slow step forward. You have no idea what's in that evidence. Thomas snapped. She doesn't need to know. Walker's eyes flicked between us. Daniel Hayes is a dangerous man. He is not who you think he is. I felt my anger rising, not loud, but hot and steady. Then tell me who he is. Walker stared at me with that cold sheriff's disdain. He's a criminal. He's Elena's father, I shot back. And for the first time, Walker's calm cracked. His voice hardened. No. He doesn't have that right. Thomas stepped between us, but not to protect me. To stop me from speaking again. Margaret, he said quietly, you need to let this go. For your sake. For hers. For the first time, I noticed something in Thomas's voice. Fear. It wasn't fear of Daniel. It was fear of Walker. I grabbed the box tighter. I just want to know the truth. Walker took off his hat and placed it on the table. And then he looked me dead in the eyes. You can't protect your daughter if you don't shut your mouth. The words were so casual, so calm, that my blood went cold. I stepped back. You stay away from her. Walker didn't raise his voice. But he leaned in close, too close, and whispered. You think Daniel left because of love? He left because I gave him a choice. Leave or suffer. Thomas closed his eyes. As if he already knew. Walker's voice sharpened. He was supposed to disappear forever. But he came back. And he brought you trouble. I opened the box and pulled out one of the documents. What is this? I demanded. Walker didn't even look. That paper could ruin the wrong people. The wrong people? I said. Or the powerful ones? Walker's jaw clenched. And that was my answer. Elena's small voice echoed from the hallway. Mama? Walker turned quickly, seeing her. I moved fast, putting myself between him and my daughter. Don't look at her, I hissed. Walker ignored me. He studied the little girl for just one moment. Then he said quietly, She looks nothing like Thomas. The room went silent. And just like that, the secret I had fought to protect was spoken aloud. Thomas finally broke. "Get out of my house," he said through his teeth. Walker didn't move. He leaned against the table and tapped the wooden box with one finger. "You think you're protecting her? You're not." Then he said the sentence that shattered everything. "You have no idea what Daniel was part of." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Walker stepped closer and spoke with terrifying finality. "He got involved with men who don't forgive. Men who want that girl. Men who will come back." "Why?" I breathed. Walker didn't blink. "Because Daniel Hayes wasn't running away from this town. He was running away from the men whose secrets he stole." The room tilted. Everything fell out from under me. Daniel wasn't just a lover. Not just a father. Not just a man cast out. He was holding a secret he wasn't supposed to have. And now they wanted it back. The documents in the box. The proof. The reason for everything. Walker lowered his voice. "You need to think very carefully about who you trust. Because the next knock on your door won't be mine." That was the moment I realized. Daniel didn't just give me a box. He gave me a target. And the people hunting him had just found their way into my life.